I think that it was kind of wishful thinking that streaming somehow would magically give all content at a much lower cost. To me, we're kind of a little bit back to where we started. If you want all content, you're going to have lots of streaming services.
Hi everyone, for today's episode of Retention Zone, the video podcast focused on streaming monetization, I have the pleasure to have with me Jonas Engwall, the CEO of Bedrock Streaming. But I know your name in Swedish, you say it in a different way, correct, Jonas?
Yes, Jonas Engwall, but very few people would say that to me these days.
I know you spent the last 20 years in media and streaming, so tell me a bit about the journey to become the CEO of Bedrock Streaming.
Yeah, so I've been doing, like you said, I've been doing media for a fairly long time. So now I've been with Bedrock since 2019, pretty much when Bedrock was founded in its current form. Before that, I was almost 10 years in Asia. I was working for also, so let me just say, Bedrock is a joint venture between RTL Group and MCs. And in Asia, I was mainly working for a company which is also joint venture between RTL and CBS in the US. We had channels across 19 countries. So I had the pleasure of running those. I also worked for iFlix, which was kind of a Asian version of, well, Netflix, if you will. Described. And for that, I've also lived in India, and I also lived in many places, worked in many places in Europe. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I was thinking you had because of time and space, you had the luxury and maybe the stress of observing the evolution of media, but also from different angle. But maybe it was a great experience, I can imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I'm super grateful to have been able to work and live in different places, discover different people, different cultures, different way of working. And also, like you say, you see media from different angles, and it's quite interesting to see that journey. So yeah, it's a real pleasure. Of course, it's also tiring when you're constantly moving, etc. But yeah, but it's good. It's worth it.
And can you explain for everybody? I think everybody knows RTL Group as a name, but I'm not sure everybody knows exactly today, currently, what is RTL Group doing? Where are the tentacles of the big group?
Yeah, so RTL Group is part of Bertelsmann. Bertelsmann, sorry, terrible cold. RTL Group is basically the media arm of Bertelsmann. They mainly operate, well, they have operations across the globe, but mainly in terms of channels and radio and streaming, it is in Europe. Of course, Fremantle is also part of RTL Group. Fremantle has operations including Italy, across the globe, basically. And they are behind a lot of big formats like Got Talent and these kind of shows, reality, but also scripted and documentaries. It's a pretty decent big production company, and it's obviously lately, as you probably know, RTL Group has tried to do several mergers in several countries. Unfortunately, not been allowed to, and has, as a result, decided to sell off certain assets. So it's slightly smaller than it used to be, but it's still the largest media group in Europe.
And inside that, what is the role of Bedrock Streaming? I can imagine by the name, but maybe explain the rationale for that if you want.
Yeah, so I'll give you slight bit of history around Bedrock, right? So the company has existed since 2008. So experience-wise, we're pretty old in the streaming world. In 2019, I came back to the group from Europe, from Asia back to Europe, and the idea was, as a group, we really saw we need to up our investments and up our game, so to speak, in streaming. At the time, there were several platforms being built and operated across the group. And if you look at, I mean, back then in 2019, you at least we saw that this is not sustainable, right? You cannot. It's so difficult. It's so costly to run and build streaming platforms, and to do it, several times is just not a good recipe, right? So we said, okay, we need to consolidate. We wanna massively upgrade our investment into streaming, but at the same time, we want to do it in a smart way. So we're going to consolidate our efforts, and we basically built a platform that totally looks and feels and acts totally different in the different countries based on the needs. But behind the scenes, there's kind of one motor running, right? One engine. So, and it's kind of funny because I was of the impression back in 2019, I was said, look, if you're in the US or in India and China, you have enough scale in one country to build and operate a big platform. But in Europe, obviously, countries are, as we all know, and not as big. So you really need to create scale cross-border. But now, even in the US, basically all of those players are consolidating, etc., to kind of reach even better scale. So I think what we are doing makes a lot of sense. And I think in the beginning, in 2019, 2020, the golden age of streaming, right, where you just went to your board and said, I need another 20 million for whatever streaming tech, and no one asked any questions. But obviously today there's a bit more focus on profitability, so things aren't as easy when it comes to getting money. So I think now we're kind of back to a more realistic view on streaming, and I think that's the kind of view that we took in 2019, and I think now we're well placed with that view.
No, I totally agree that the more you can operate a platform and grow the platform with all the learnings, the end result, if centralization doesn't kill localization, as you said at the beginning, you need to provide what every market or product needs. But in the end, imagine the amount of learnings you have from all these different experiences and how the platform can grow together. My next question is, are you doing it just for RTL Group, or your ambition is to also find, if you want AWS style, make it available for others?
No, we absolutely make it available for others. So we operate, we do it for the group. That was how it started. But even from day one, it was basically expressed that we will do this for people outside the group as well, for the simple reason that it's a win-win. We want to create more scale. More scale means more innovation power for the platform. It means a better platform simply for the guys around the table. And like you said, it sounds like you've been to one of our product boards almost. There's a lot of learning happening across the countries.
Not yet.
No, but I'm joking. But the point is, I don't think anyone really understands exactly how streaming is going to pan out. So there's a lot of experiments going on, right? Rightfully so. And what we do actually, obviously we provide the platform, and that's obviously key. But we also have lots of forums where people around the platform, around the table, so to speak, which are leading media companies in Europe, that are really, really focused on becoming leading national streaming champions. They can exchange experiences, right? And they can discuss, and they can, collaborate. And it's quite powerful actually to have that forum to exchange views. And it's just, someone can do the A/B testing in one country, and the other one will say, great, I think that makes sense for me as well. And they can very easily apply the same logic since they're using the same platform.
And going to if you want, the point of my video podcast, streaming monetization, how important is that for your clients, even if internal clients, and how important is for you as a platform? Because again, even for that profitability, for the whatever you call it, from the streaming services, has become number one priority, if not cash flow. So I think maybe the shift of we need to have streaming video, we need to have a CMS, I've experienced myself. Now shift a bit to, okay, now we need to make money, have subscribers, integrate whatever advertising. What is
Yeah.
your observation there?
I think that I would say, again, 2019, people, in my view, at least a lot of people I talk to, they they looked at streaming as SVOD. You know, it was, and especially if you come from a advertising world, if you can broaden your revenue generation, it's obviously a great plus. But I think people went a little bit too far. They were really focusing on SVOD, and to me, streaming is streaming. As in, you have SVOD and AVOD, and I would say for most people, it makes sense to try to find a happy balance between those two revenue streams, right? And I think that if you come from free TV, if you've been an advertising funded TV channel, it's unlikely, in my view, that you become a full SVOD platform, right? Because it just doesn't make so much sense, in my view. And it's equally true the other way around. However, having said that, I think that I think the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, and we see that now with all the people around our platform. They all came from a pure AVOD model or a pure SVOD model, and they all pretty much have a balance, right? I mean, the balance might be 85-15 or 90-10 or something like that, but there's a balance, and I think that's really important because that allows you to start experimenting. And I also fundamentally believe, I mean, it's my view, I'm not sure if it's going to pan out, but first of all, I think that Spotify has done a really good job in teaching people the value of, you pay a little bit and you decrease or take away the advertising. So I think they have done a really good job, and I think they're almost 50-50 on their subscriber base or their user base. And I think that when it comes to media companies in Europe that traditionally have been free-to-air broadcasters, yes, they start out as a free service, but I really think that, paying 5-6 euros as an end user, like it's a one Starbucks coffee a month,
Yeah, no.
To basically upgrade the experience that you probably spend 1, 2, 3 hours per day using, to me, it's a no-brainer. And I think that's what's going to happen, right? People will slowly start doing that to get a better experience.
To be honest, I'm so happy you said that, because it's something I really believe. And sometimes when I say it, I'm afraid people won't say, because it's not a problem for you to spend 15 euro. But I mean, people complaining about the cost of one streaming service, because then there is another problem. 15 or 14.99. It's like, okay, you don't go to breakfast then. So if, again, there is people that cannot go to breakfast outside, I totally respect that. But normally the people complaining are not in that situation. So it's weird that something that, as you said, occupies 3-4 hours of your time, it's less than the cost of 2-3 coffee and 2-3 croissants. So I totally subscribe that completely.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the problem is that now people don't have one streaming service; they have many. So,
no, of course.
What do you think about the churn coming from the famous streaming fatigue or subscription fatigue? What do you think? How do you think churn is a problem, and what do you think we should do to, as vendors or streaming services, to fight churn?
In the early days of streaming, streaming was always pitched as something cheap, and suddenly you got all the content for much less money. And at the end of the day, I mean, it cost X to make all that content, and somehow you have to get money back for it. So I think that it was kind of wishful thinking that streaming somehow would magically give all content at a much lower cost. To me, we're kind of a little bit back to where we started. If you want all content, you're going to have lots of streaming services, and that's going to cost a bit of money. But I think that I think that the average, I think in the US, I think the average is 3-4 services, and Europe it's probably closer to 2 or maybe 3. And I think I don't think that's going to dramatically change, right? People will switch around, and I think it's up to each service to really make sure that they are providing great content, a great platform, and do as much as you can to keep those people happy on a regular basis. There's no silver bullet. I think there are probably some smart ways to go about it. I mean, for example, you have Prime, who is doing a little bit of TVOD, which is pretty smart actually as a churn prevention, because ultimately you're buying those shows, you pay for them, and they're technically yours. But if you lose or unsubscribe, so to speak, you kind of lose those shows, right? So it's a smart way to retain people. But yeah, that's just one option.
And do you think, I mean, almost an obvious question, but do you think that, the platform that is behind this and the data that you can manage to understand who's likely to churn, how important is in what you're doing?
No, very important, right? I mean, nowadays you have so much data. Like you say, there's a lot of churn prediction efforts and models, right? So you want to make sure you capture it very early on. So I think all of that is part of the recipes to make sure that people don't churn. You need to remind them. You need to shout out and say, this is, I'm here. I have great content for you, etc. So I think all of that stuff is something people are doing on a daily basis behind the scenes. And I think with the data today, it's all possible. So it's just it's one of many tools that you have in your toolbox to prevent churn.
And one last question, because of where I come from, sports. How do you see sports in this big, I'm now copying from AWS internal organization, MAGS, media, entertainment, gaming, and sport, this huge cloud of passion for people, or way to spend time with their passion.
Yeah.
Is sports still king, queen, relevant, more or less? What do you think?
I think sports has been, and I don't know, I don't see people's tastes changing, right? Sport is really fundamental for people. Sport is ultimately quite local. I think sports will continue to be a kind of key pillar of streaming platforms. I think they'll be even more, I would say, important for streaming platforms, just like they've been for traditional broadcast and pay TV. Yeah, and I think, in the beginning of streaming, there were all these kind of ideas of what would fit there or not, and sports wasn't one of them in the beginning. I think it's pretty damn clear that sports makes a lot of sense in streaming, right? And also you can offer all the games, and you have so many more fun things you can do with streaming around sports. So I think it makes total sense, right? So I think that I would argue that all content, one way or the other, will be delivered to users via streaming, be it live or not, or linear channels or not. That's another story. And I think sports going to be right smack in the middle of that for sure in the future.
So what a perfect ending for someone that spent 35 years in sport and media. I think that's fascinating. Also a fascinating venture you're in. I will observe in the next years what happened with Bedrock Streaming, but I can imagine it's a fun position to be, with everything so happening global scale. So thank you for coming, even if in not best condition with your health, but thank you for doing this.
Pleasure to be here. Happy to come back at some point.
Grazie. Ciao.
Ciao.